Pete, making a YouTube video on how to fix your garbage disposal. I have this garbage disposal here for me. It jammed, got some stuff down there, and I decided to take it apart and take a look at it. Disconnected the garbage disposal. Get this thing off, I stuck my corner of my Allen wrench in here, and I yanked, and that twisted, and it came undone. So I got this thing all taken apart, and it had a couple cracks in it, but you can see that shiny right there. There was a crack there. It was not leaking there, but it was cracked. If there's any cracks in here, some JB Weld in there, which is a two-part epoxy, and this stuff will dry harder, just as hard as this plastic here it's made out of. So you can repair any cracks to the outside of this with JB Weld. The reason I'm repairing this instead of just going out and buying a new one is because they're all made like crap, unless you want to spend 300 bucks and get one made out of stainless steel, which is what one part should be made out of. This thing was corroded. I'm trying to get it all apart before I see everything that's wrong with it. The problem is the entire thing is rusted solid. So what I'm doing here is removing the rust with electrolysis. Basically what I do is I put some nails. I use 10D nails, and I kind of surrounded it a little bit, and I connected it with some steel wire, and I went out and bought a battery charger. I needed one anyways. You buy a manual 12 volt battery charger. So I connected the negative to a wire that attaches to the actual piece that I want to be de-rusted, and then I attach the positive to these anodes here, and they're going to pull the rust off of the piece. What I tried doing before is removing rust with all-purpose cleaning vinegar. That just takes way too long. And this is how you know if electrolysis is working. Look at all them bubbles. Now I'm going to leave this and come back in a little bit. I just took this out of the water here. I'm hoping that got enough corrosion off of the screw so I can undo this, or else I'm going to have to buy a new garbage disposal. And this is all the corrosion that it took off. I'm going to try to take this apart now. I finally got this thing apart after using my torch on that bolt. So I was tugging, pulling. I thought I was going to break my Allen wrench, this is just, I believe, a quarter inch Allen wrench. Thought I was going to break it, but I finally got this thing apart, and this is the side where this kind of went on here like this. I pried it off with a screwdriver, a flathead. I just stuck that in there and pulled down and pried this up. Bent it a little bit, but that can be bent back. This is a rubber gasket, or a large O-ring anyways. And here was another smaller O-ring. Here's some nice clean metal here, some clean steel. You can see this is rusting in here, and right there you can see a lot of corrosion. So this has had water dripping on it for a while. Perfect example of planned obsolescence, where you have a very nice piece of machinery designed to last. Electric motors, I mean, they'll last pretty much forever. They'll last 100 years. And then you have this piece, nice thick piece of steel. It's very rusty, but I mean, this thing could last another 5 years. And if this was stainless steel, I mean, this could last indefinitely. And then you have this piece where it's an even thinner piece of steel and it's bent. And where it's bent, it creates little fissures. And with water sitting in those fissures, it rusts through those areas sooner than everything else. And then that water will drip into the electric motor and short it out. Or just create a drip where you have water leaking in your sink. What I'm going to do is de-rust this whole entire thing using electrolysis. I'm going to put it in this water for a couple hours. I took this out of the solution, the electrolysis, and look at all those holes. Holy cow. This thing was pretty much falling apart. And you could see they're all around the edge where they bent the metal. And some of those holes are pretty big. And what I'm going to do... So how I cleaned it up is after I took it out of that solution, I then applied Goo Gone to the edge here, around the edge, because there was some sort of like a tar type substance. So I used Goo Gone and a screwdriver just to scrape that out of there, and you can see some of the remnants there. I did that for about 5 minutes, and after I did that, I vigorously sanded it for about 2 minutes with 100 grit sandpaper to rough up the surface. After I sanded it, I washed it in some soap and water to get all that loose debris off. Next thing I'm going to do is duct tape on this side of it where all these holes are to create a little barrier so that I can add my JB Weld. Just finished adding all the duct tape on that. Hold it up to the light and no more pinholes. I kept holding up to the light and there was just more and more holes. Next thing I'm going to do is just open this up. I'm squirting this whole thing around this outer edge. Really cold in here, so I have a little space heater going to try to heat this up, and here you can see it all dripping down. So I mixed it after I put it in there, and then now I'm just going to be sweeping it, keep sweeping it to that corner there. So this whole thing will be getting coated, but I'm trying to keep the thickest coating around that edge there where that premature wear is. I had the glue on, or the JB Weld on, and I let it set for about 20 minutes, and I have it in front of this heater because it's really cold out here and you need some heat. So it's been about 20 minutes. It's not cured and it's probably still tacky, but I think it's good enough where I can take all the tape off. I let this cure for a while. It's pretty hard now. Pretty confident that the paint is going to stick to it. Feels not sticky at all, which is good, which is what you want. I had it sitting in front of a heat gun and a heater there, so it cured a little faster. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tape off some of these areas here. This is like a rubber gasket or something here. So I'm going to put a piece of tape on the top here, and then I don't want to get too thick of a material along the side here. I'm also going to be painting this piece with a rust proofing. I've got my pieces taped off. I got this taped off slightly below this edge. This one I just have this part taped up, and then on the other side here I taped up those moving parts there. Here's everything after I painted it. So I spray painted it first with this rust remover. 2 coats of that. Then I did 2 coats of this high heat. And then I let it sit in front of my heat gun. And that actually kind of melted my glue a little bit. So don't get it too hot. But it didn't run or anything. So we got everything. I got all my tape off. Got everything. Everything spins nice. Everything looks good. And now begins the process of putting all this back together. I'm going to dry fit it. Got the bottom of the motor. Just set it down like this. I'm going to take this piece and we're just going to set that on there. Now we drop that in there like this, and then we're going to just pop it into place. Just with your fist. This is a like machine type of oil here. You can use motor oil, you can use whatever kind of oil. Canola, well, I wouldn't use canola oil, but. And we're going to place a couple drops on here. 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 And we're going to go around this ring here. This is another type of, I'm going to lube this up with my fingers a little bit with some more of that oil, and that should slide right into place there. Now that piece is slid in place, there is another piece. This is like a metal spring. We're going to place this spring in there. Since we have that spring in place, it kind of locks into place underneath that rubber boot. Now we just put the, I don't know what this is called, the spinning disc on. There's this little metal piece here underneath there. I taped it in place so I didn't forget about it, and I actually did forget about it until I removed the tape. But what we're going to do is just oil this up, and this is going to sit down, bevel down. Now that I have that with the bevel down, sitting on top there, now I will place the spinning disc on top, obviously with those blades up. Now that's, I'm placing the bolt in place. Now before I go any further, there is a gap here where water and food and all that junk can get. You need some heavy duty grease in there. Just some brake and caliper grease. If things are high temperature, they usually work very well. I'm going to be using this. I'm going to take this back off and I'm going to put a little bit on there and then squeeze that back on there to get a nice good seal. I really wasn't sure how much to put on there, but I put on a lot. Now we put the parts on there. Now that we have our parts on, we tighten her up. I tightened it up. Spins nice and freely. I have this O-ring. That's going to go right here at the bottom around this edge. And I'm going to oil it up before I put it in there. The O-ring is oiled up and I dropped it in. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to dry fit the top piece straight down on there, and I'm going to screw it in. I want to make sure there's no binding. I need to make sure that I can get it in, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some silicone caulk around here, and I cannot do that without knowing that it actually goes on, because once I put that thing on there, that stuff is going to dry. It's going to be really difficult to ever get it off. You don't want to use anything that could shrink. Well, I got the silicone. You could use grease. You could probably even use any kind of regular caulking. All of my silicone was hardened, and I just ended up using my tub seal. So now I'm going to slowly lower the top on there. Got it all tightened up. You can see in a couple spots the caulk is slightly protruding out. Go ahead and give that a wipe. Waited a day for the caulk to dry. Now I'm going to hook it up under the sink and hope it works. Here's, got it all installed. I have some water running in my sink. Here's the garbage disposal. There's not much light. I put a plate under here to see if any water drips. I've been running water for a little bit. No leaking. I'm gonna turn on the switch. And there it is.